So my whole life, I'd had minor experiences with the paranormal. Things like hearing people say my name or footsteps when I'm alone in a house or at work. However, I have had 2 bigger experiences, and this is the scary one. When I, 40 female, was 20, my parents rented a house and let me take over the basement. My parents' room, along with my sister's room and an office, were on the 2nd floor with the living room. We had no issues when we first moved in, or for the first few months, which I truly believe was because a friend of mine was staying with me in the basement. After she was kicked out of her house, she stayed with us only until she was able to get her own place. However, as soon as she left, I began waking up about 2 a.m. every night and seeing a dark shadow across the room. At first, I thought maybe it was my eyes playing tricks on me and just tried to ignore it. Around this time, though, I began to get a bad feeling down there and started spending more time upstairs when just hanging out at home. I was working at a pub, and so I would often be home during the day alone while my parents were at work and my sister was in school. It was at this time I started hearing footsteps walk up and down the hallway on the 2nd floor, which I later found out my mom would hear if she was home alone as well. But whatever was upstairs felt peaceful. Now, this is where it gets a little scary. I started to realize that the dark figure I would see at night was getting closer. I didn't notice right away because it would just stand there, but each night it was about 1 step closer than the night before. Now, looking back, I probably should have moved into the office upstairs when it got to my bed, but I didn't. The last night I stayed in the basement, I woke up to this black shadow on top of me. I felt as though I could not breathe, and I started to panic, while at the same time, I could not move at all. It was terrifying. I felt like it lasted forever, and yet it was most likely only a few minutes. I took my blanket and pillow, ran up the stairs, and slept on the couch in the living room. The next morning, when my mother woke up and saw me sleeping on the couch, she asked me why. When I told her what happened, she looked pale, like all the blood drained from her face. Then she told me that at the same time, she and my dad, who is very much a non-believer, had a very similar experience, only strangely not as scary, more like a warning. We only used the basement for storage after that. To this day, we think whatever was upstairs was trying to warn my parents of what was happening to me downstairs. When I was a 3rd year in college, I was one of the RAs in this house on campus. My school is on an island off the coast of Maine, and most of the buildings, except for the new dorms, are converted New England mansions and cottages, some built in the 1800s. The house I was in is a converted mansion, complete with the servants' quarters and nursery. I was a senior RA, so I got the old master bedroom, which was at the far end of the house, next to a fire escape. Prior to classes starting, the RAs go through a training week. It was actually 2 weeks, and everyone stays in this house since it's the biggest, and then move to their respective houses at the end of training. The other RAs all stayed in the servants' quarters. More fun, I guess. So other than feeling a little lonely on my side of the house, I was content to unpack throughout the week on my own. Things started about 3 days into training, when I started finding colorful craft feathers inside my stuff. As in, I'd open a seal box and there would be a craft feather there. Or I'd take out a pair of pants from a drawer, and underneath, I'd find a feather. They were always tucked away, except one that was in the middle of my floor. It was odd, but I chalked it up to mice in the house and disregarded it. Then one night, early on, I was awakened to footsteps in the hall. My immediate thought was that something was wrong, and another RA was coming to get me. There was no other reason someone would be down here at this time. I took note of the time, 2 a.m. on the dot. I could hear the footsteps come up to the door, and then nothing. I was a little spooked, but I figured I'd ask about it in the morning. Next morning, none of the RAs admitted to walking down my hall at that hour, so I let it go. Until that night, it happened again. The footsteps woke me up, and again, it was 2 a.m. on the dot. Then it happened the following night. I started to get freaked out until someone suggested it could be a night watchman. Because this school is a total hippie college, we didn't have proper security on campus, but we did have 2 old Mainers who did nightly rounds. They would walk through the dorms, public spaces, and check that the alarms were working and no one needed anything, etc. Great guys, knew them by name, and they were always friendly. Of course, it had to be them. The timed footsteps, the fact that my room was beside the fire escape. They probably went down those stairs, and I just couldn't hear them. I decided I would meet the night watchman at 2 a.m. so I could put this behind me. I set my alarm for 1:55 a.m. and propped my door open, turned on all my lights, sat on my bed, and waited for the night watchman to come my way. At 2 a.m., I hear footsteps approaching. They're getting closer until it sounds like they are right at my door, but there's no one there. I get up and I go to my door and look down the hallway. Nobody is there. Because I'm petrified and need a rational explanation, I call out, "Is anybody there?" Immediately, everything I had on my door, my name tag, RA papers, the little door signs on my doorknob, everything falls off at once. Terrified, I slam and lock my door and keep the lights on all night. In the morning, I tell my fellow RAs, and they are all laughing at me, thinking I have an overactive imagination. I suspected maybe they were pranking me, but then things escalated. Fast forward to orientation week. My house is all freshmen, so I know their schedules, which is pretty much in mandatory orientation sessions in the lecture hall. I decided I needed a nap before lunch, and I went to my room and slept from 12 to 12:30. I would catch the end of lunch before they stopped serving at 1 p.m. I am completely alone in the house. I wake up with my alarm at 12:30 and I head out to lunch. I decide to cross all the way through the servants' quarters because their fire escape and external door dumps out to the main path. To get to the servants' quarters, I have to pass through the other main rooms, and then there is a sort of threshold that has a large bathroom between the house sections. As I pass by, the door handle is turning back and forth, like someone is stuck inside. Despite my weird experiences, my first thought is that someone is legitimately stuck in the bathroom. It happened to a few RAs during training. The door is warped and doesn't fit the frame perfectly. I knock on the door and say, "Hey, this door sticks. Let me help you." But they ignore me and keep turning the knob and rattling the door. I knock and repeat my offer to help, but they continue. Then the door flies open and then slams in my face. Then it opens again and slams in my face. Then it opens slowly and stays open. Because I'm dumb or just duty-bound, I feel like I need to check and make sure I don't have a resident stuck in there or something. I step inside the bathroom. There is no one in there. I run out of the house and into the dining hall and find my co-RA, who lives in the servants' quarters of the house, and I tell her what happened. She just tells me there's a logical explanation. The window was probably open and caused a pressure difference. I'm so scared, and I tell her no way that is what happened. That night, to the amusement of my residents, I walk through the house and say out loud, "If there is a spirit in here, I don't want you to feel like you can't live here, but we have to coexist peacefully. I am terrified of you, and I don't want to be. We can both live here. Just please, don't show yourself to me at night, and please let me sleep when I go to sleep." I feel like I needed to make boundaries, but I also didn't think I could ask it to leave. Things smoothed over. Sometimes I would get the feeling that something was in my room when I'd be studying, like a friend sitting down on my bed or something. When I was ready for bed, I'd announce it and it would feel like the presence would leave, but it could totally just be my brain making things up. Fast forward to Halloween. I've come down with pneumonia and am very, very sick. I spend a day in the hospital and then was sent back to campus with meds. A couple days pass. My co-RA comes to check on me one night and asks me how I'm doing. I tell her I'm getting there, but my room is a disaster. Clothes and papers everywhere. I start to get up, saying I'd feel better if I could just put the papers in one pile and the clothes in another. She tells me she'll help me do this tomorrow, but now I should sleep. I fall asleep, but am awakened by noises in my room. I also had a mouse problem, so I was careful to never leave food in my room. I realized maybe I forgot to bring a mug or something downstairs, so I turn on my headlamp to look for the source of the noise and deal with the plate or whatever. As I'm shining my headlamp, I see one of my sweaters slide across the floor, then a folder in the opposite direction, then more clothes and papers. Everything was sorting itself just like I wanted. I was terrified, so I say out loud, "I'm so grateful that you're trying to help me, but I'm so sick and I need to sleep. Please stop." And then everything stopped. I fell asleep. In the morning, my co-RA tells me I must have been feverish and did it myself. I guess it's possible, but I know what I saw, and I no longer had a fever at this point. The following year, I asked the head of the buildings and grounds, who was here since the college opened, whether anyone died in that house. He told me before this was a college, the owners of the house had a 3-year-old boy who died on the premises. I'd love to believe it was his spirit just looking for a friend. I hope he's moved on now, but I have a sort of fondness for those spooky experiences. Nothing has happened to me since, so I really think there was something about that place. It's been 11 years since I lived there. Howdy, board. As with many, I've always been into the paranormal, but never really believed in any of it. I've sought out ways of experiencing paranormal things, but any time I've had something, I've had a way of dismissing it and could chalk it up to just a weird occurrence. About a year ago, though, I switched roles in the museum I work at. I've been here for 5 years, and some weird things have happened. But again, you can rule out most to weird coincidences. But when I moved to the collections department, where the people who take care of the objects and artifacts in the museum's possession and on loans, things got weird, really fast. Everyone talks about museums being haunted, and it's understandable. We house and care for lots of really old, sometimes creepy, objects, and many of them have storied pasts. Our collection is roughly 200,000 pieces, and we have some doozies. To make it short, I've been seeing shadows, hearing my name, and have lights turn on and off when I'm alone. Our storage is split into 3 areas. The upstairs mezzanine is home to our toy and puppet collections. Downstairs has 3 connected areas split into 2 rooms. Textiles by itself, and American materials, and ethnographic world objects in the main area. And the 3rd area is in a separate part of the museum, split into 2 and houses larger objects and natural sciences. The most convincing evidence I've experienced for the existence of paranormal activity happened about a month ago and has really stuck with me. To set the scene, I was in our textiles room, lower level storage, in a room off of the main area with the world objects, returning some clothing we had shown on a tour. To briefly explain the storage setup, you come down the stairs and can go left into the world objects, or right and take a turn into the American materials. However, the stairs are the only thing separating the areas, so the stairwell is more like a dugout hole than anything. Turning left into world objects and immediately taking another left will let you walk perpendicular to the aisles of world objects and bring you to the right side of American materials. On that right wall, looking out into American Materials, is the door into textiles. It's normal practice, like with most places, to only have lights on in an area you're working. So, I had the lights on at the base of the stairwell, the very front of World Objects, and that illuminated enough of my path into the textiles room. Up until now, I had had lights turn off, doors slam, heard my name, and had objects move. Basic things, but stuff I could ignore, look past, or explain away. I went down the stairs into this area and was immediately overcome with panic and anxiety. The room was cold, and there was just a bad energy. I turned around, sat in my office for a couple of minutes, thinking I was just having a panic attack and cooling off, and decided to just ignore it. I went back down, hit the lights, beelined it into the textiles room, and started putting things back in place. I felt like I was being watched the entire time I walked through the lower level, but didn't think about it and figured I was just paranoid, but I couldn't shake this gut feeling of paranoia. Then I left the room, and that's when it got bad. I open the door, and I can see all the way across American Materials. The last shelving unit on the far wall from me is where we keep items from a famously deceased child. The family donated all of their belongings after their passing. There weren't any lights on in that area, but I could see someone. It looked like a fully grown man, probably around 6 feet tall, and the shape was hulking. But they were darker than dark. They were darker than the shadows of the room. I'm telling you guys, with my oath on whatever you want, that I could see this person that was darker than an unlit wall, and it sprinted. I mean, absolutely ran as fast as I've ever seen anyone run into the closet wall. Not at me, not to scare me, but sprinted to its right, which was only about 10 feet away from it, into a cement wall. This all took place in about 5 seconds, and I just ignored it. I just quick walked out of the storage, flipped the lights, and halted up the stairs. I got about halfway up the stairs when the hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up, and I heard someone say my name, and the doorknob at the base of the stairs started to turn. I didn't even stop to listen. I'm sure there's a way of explaining it. Again, I very much could have been having a panic attack, but the anxiety went away just about as soon as I walked back up the stairs the first time. Since then, things have gotten stranger, with objects moving in front of me and other people in the department, or doors closing in front of us. Like I said, things have happened since I've been here, and there are plenty of stories of before I was in the department or at the museum, but this thing a month ago was just different. I'm only writing this now because last night I had a dream where a ghost or something was holding my mouth closed and pushing on my back, and when I woke up, it was happening too. I feel like things are getting weirder and weirder with me, and I've been looking into shadow people or other sorts of weird apparitions. I doubt this gets much traction, but if anyone wants to chip in on ideas as to what this might be or how to explain it, I'd love to hear any and all thoughts. Wishing my best to all of you.